I always say this, like when they win, you point the cameras at them. When you lose, you try to point the cameras at you because you want to help absorb that because you don't want them to feel it. But you catch a lot of strays sometimes, and it can be frustrating. But you just have to swallow it because it's never about like me. It's never about like what's hard for me. It's always about the fighter, and I've always had like a fighter first mentality. As like I'll absorb a lot of that stuff, and then credit them when they're winning, and take the credit when we're losing or the blame.
Wearing a t-shirt that says never made. I believe him. I think he's telling the truth.
I've been watching you guys. Welcome back to the largest podcast in the world. Today we've got the head coach and founder of the New England Cartel, Tyson Chartier. How are you doing, Tyson? You doing good?
Good, man. Sped, nice to meet you. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. And how do you pronounce your name? Chartier, right?
Yeah, I just say Chartier.
Chartier.
Probably a
Okay.
bunch of different ways to pronounce it. Like if you go to Canada or France or something like that. But in the US, we just say Chartier.
You're born in New Hampshire, but
I was actually
you
born in Ohio and I lived there
really.
for a year, but now I grew up in New Hampshire. Still
We
there.
got to call Tapology, man. We got to call Tapology. Tell them to fix that. It says you're born in New Hampshire. How did you get to Boston?
So my dad grew up in New Hampshire and then met my mom. My mom's parents at the time lived in Ohio, and they went out there, and I was born there. We lived there for a year, and then we came back to New Hampshire because that's where my dad's side of the family was.
Tapology says that New England Cartel was founded around 2017. Is that true?
Yeah, I was like, so we were at another gym, like a bunch of us were at another gym, and then we kind of broke off in 2017. For a couple years, we didn't call it anything. We were just like kind of a group of vagabonds run around training at different gyms and still fighting in the UFC. And then in 2019, we gave it the name, the England Cartel, and then we just been kind of rolling with that ever since.
What was missing in the region that made you say we're building this? Or you said you already had the team. What made you guys leave that gym?
Well, it wasn't even my idea at first. It was like I was working with a fighter, and he was just unhappy at the gym he was at, and I was already cornering him quite a bit, and I was managing him. And he's like, "Hey, what do you think about we break off into our own thing?" And I thought about it for a couple weeks, and that was like it was a big decision because it was like I'm gonna follow this one fighter, but all my friends, like including some of my roommates and stuff, were still at the other gym. So I had to make a decision: do I go with this guy and help him, or do I stay with all my friends and everything I know? And I didn't want to abandon that fighter. He's at a critical point in his career. He's in the UFC, and so we took a risk, and I went with him, and we just kind of just built from there. And then another fighter followed, and then we just had traveled around for a couple of years, different gyms. And then when COVID happened, it really solidified like, okay, we have to start like training in one place versus just going around. And then once we kind of put some roots down, more people started coming and training, and like other people in the room, and I started coaching some other guys too. So that's kind of like the origin story.
Got it. And then fast forward to 2020, just 3 years later, you win MMA Coach of the Year. How did that make you feel? Is that something that you cared about?
I never cared about any of that stuff. I mean, I think the only thing that really made an impact on my life was like the amount of time I was missing at home with my wife and my kids. And like even like her, a lot of people don't understand what MMA is. They think like it's like you just, oh cool, that's cute. They don't really get it. I used to be in tech sales. I had a good job. I have a master's degree, and I left that to pursue MMA. So they didn't really understand what it was. So like for me to get recognition on the national stage and be able to like when my kids get older, they're gonna be like, yeah, you did miss a lot, but you're good at what you do. It's like I can say I'm good at what I do. My fighters can say that, but like to get something like that, it's a little bit of validation that's like, all right, he's not just out here dicking off. He's like he's actually good at what he does. So I think it gives you a little bit of like credibility back home, if anything. But honestly, if I'm being truthful, it probably was like one of the worst things that happened to me coaching wise, because I feel like when you get awards like that, then people start to like almost I don't want to say I don't want to say the word jealous, but like like a lot of the MMA community in New England, they were like, they always say you get most hate from the people you know, right? And then
Yeah.
most love from the people you never met. So like back home, I felt like a lot of people were like looking like you, the coach of the year, okay, like and then a lot of like kind of like what are you talking about? Like how do you get that? So I think it was a little annoying in that aspect, but with success in anything comes like a little bit of hate. So I think that had a lot of people show their true colors, but it was like good recognition to the people that matter, like my wife, my kids, like, my kid's 10 years old. He gets to like tell people what his daddy does for work, and then he'll like brag about it. Like, yeah, he was coach of the year. And like, it's cool for them to be able to be proud of me and like show them that like, yeah, I'm not just telling you I'm good at what I do, like other people recognize it. So I think it was good in that sense. I don't care about the awards. I just care about winning. And
Yeah.
then aside from winning, second would be like building good young men, like taking these kids from teenagers all the way up through their 30s and trying to help them make good decisions in life and be a good spouse, be a good dad, be a good teammate, all that stuff. Like I think us coaches, we have a role to not only like help guys win, but like set them up for after fighting and try to help make them like be good people. So yeah, so the award stuff it's cool, right? But if I could trade that award in for win a couple of those fights that we lost the next year, like I would gladly do it.
Yeah, I'm sure you would. I mean, basically, you made a lot of sacrifices. So you would say that you really love this game?
I mean, it'd be crazy if I didn't. 2022, I was gone 113 nights because I
Wow.
was like at home. My wife's like, you're gone a lot. This and that. I was like, I'm not gone that much. And then we really started to look at it. I had to take a long look in the mirror and like, damn, I was gone 113 nights. That's like one of every 3 nights
Yeah.
that I wasn't home with my kids.
Yeah.
And so I had to like really make a concerted effort starting the next year, like 2023, to be like, all right, I have to like be more present at home, and I have to like, I'm not gonna get this time back with my kids. I had 3 kids; they were all under 6, and I'm putting all that on my wife, and it wasn't fair. So I really took a step back in terms of like, all right, I can try to prioritize what traveling is absolutely necessary and what ones that maybe I don't have to do, um, and try to take a little bit more off her plate and be more present at home. And I'm glad I did that, because you can't get that time back. But the fact that it was hard to do shows that I really do love this sport. And it's not even the sport. Like you kind of hate the sport, right? Like a sport kind of grinds you down. But I like the relationships you get with certain athletes. Like there's certain guys you meet them when they're young and you just have that special bond. And you you look them in the eyes when they're an amateur and they're like, listen, they're pretty good. Like they're like, I want to go to the UFC. And you're like, I think you could get there, but like you got to listen and like this is what we're gonna do. And then fast forward, 6 years, they're in the UFC and they're winning their first UFC fight. There's a lot of reward, that's very rewarding. And there's a lot of satisfaction in that. And it's like when you take a step back and kind of see the forest, you can't see the forest through the trees, right? Like
Yeah.
when you take a step back and then you look, like, man, like me and this kid made an agreement when he was a teenager and look where he is now. And that's like I had a big role in that. And that's really rewarding. And it's like lessons that I bring to my kids, about hard work and effort and trusting a process and being coachable. And I think it's good. That's the most rewarding part for me. I don't like to love the sport. I love the impact that if I do my job right, the impact that I can have on these young guys.
Yeah. And I'm sure the same way the highs are super high, the lows hurt. Whenever you lose a fight, I'm sure that hurts you deep inside because as you said, the secret sacrifices you make, you want everything to be perfect. As you said, spending 1 out of 3 nights at home, spending 2 out of 3 nights at home, you want to make sure that the 2 out of 3 nights that you spend, as you said, you're present and they're full of value, you know. Whereas like somebody who's always home can, hey, I don't want to throw the ball today. I don't wanna like, I just wanna relax today. For you, it's almost like you're sacrificing so much, so when you get home, you gotta be, on top of everything too and play your role as a dad. And then in the gym, you said, you coach these fighters from teenage years, making them into MMA pros and UFC pros, and one day you just look at them and you feel good about that, right? You're
Yeah,
like a instrumental part of their growth, a very important part of their growth. How do you handle that pressure? Because I know that's a lot of pressure.
I don't I don't look at it as necessarily pressure as I do responsibility. I think there's a difference there. Pressure is like, oh, this sucks. I don't want, this feels uncomfortable. I don't want. Responsibility is almost like a movement, like where I want to help these guys and I know how to help them, and it's like, all right, we're gonna go do this. It's like, um, it's not it's not pressure because I say like, no one, there's no blueprint to how to do this, right? Like, there's no like, this isn't like the NFL where you go to college, get to a big D1 team, do well, and then you're gonna get drafted, and you can kind of know going into the draft who's gonna get drafted when. Look at all the prospects on Tapology right now. Tell me who's going to get drafted next to the UFC. Nobody knows. You have no idea. there's no blueprint. There's no like this is how you do it. This is like, well, this is how this guy did it, but this guy did it totally different. Like in both, neither one are wrong or right. So you don't really have a pathway. So you just gotta like trust the process. And like a big thing that I've found success in is like I follow my gut. Like you're like, all right, here's the situation. Here's what I think we should do. And fortunately, like my gut has always led me in the right direction generally. Like the biggest mistakes I've made probably in my career was when I like didn't follow my instinct and I was like, all right, I listened to someone else a little bit too much. I was like, all right, we'll do it your way. Like, okay, I guess we'll do that when I kind of went against what my intuition said to do. So I just follow my gut. And like when you're doing that, like it doesn't feel like a pressure. It feels like a responsibility. Like I owe it to these kids to like tell them what I think we should do and then go down this path. And fortunately, like a lot of guys around me right now that do trust me and that do look up to me. And there's a lot of it's not like stressful pressure. It's like a happy responsibility.
That's great. I mean, obviously, like trusting your gut has worked well for you, but every now and then you get that feeling. It's very common. You get that feeling. You say, maybe I'm wrong. Let's try this guy's idea. And yeah, you got to take that chance sometimes. You know what I mean? So it's a tough job. I always, when I look at the MMA coaches, I always feel like it's almost harder to be that guy.
I'd say like it's harder in different ways because obviously the fighter's the ones getting hurt. Health is everything.
Yeah.
Fighters the one putting their health on the line. I'm a big advocate for like the fighters have it terrible. Like they should all get paid more. It's a tough go. It's a short career, whatever. But I think a lot of times like people don't speak about how hard it is for the coaches, and it is hard in different ways. Like, but I was having a conversation with my athletes a couple years ago, and they were like, "Oh, this is a good time for this fight because we have this fight, and then I can just kind of chill for the holidays." I was like, "Yeah, you can." I was like, "You're gonna go home Sunday. I'm gonna go. I'm in the gym Monday. I'm ready for the next one." Like we don't get that break. We'll get vacations and stuff, but like, I think Eric Nixon said it the best once. He's like, Sunday I can go home and pout, but Monday I'm back on the next one. Like you
Who
get
said
that
that?
one day. Eric Nixon,
Eric Nixon.
and he said that me and him are good buddies. And he had said that one time. He's like, yeah, Monday you go home on Sunday and go pout, whatever. But on Monday it's back to the next guy. And you got to have that mentality, and that's hard. Like I wear these losses just like I lost like war when I was fighting. And it's tough. But then you got to go back, and the next guy's waiting for you on Monday. Like so you don't get that break. There's no like downtimes. It's like for us in our position, it's really hard to plan family stuff like a family vacation because all of a sudden you get this next fight that comes in. This guy's been waiting 2 years to get in the UFC. He gets a call, and now it's on the same week as your vacation.
Because you're
Things
an
like that.
agent too.
Yeah, so like it's just you get those calls, you got to take them. So
Yeah.
planning for the family, you're missing a lot of stuff, and you're missing birthdays, you're missing all that stuff. Like it's hard for us in different ways, and plus, like we don't. It's like we don't have like we're never coming out and complaining about what happens in camp. The fighters can come out. This isn't me complaining. Like, and my role is my role. But like, a fighter can come out and talk a lot of crap about their coach. Like, and then leave their camp like, oh, it wasn't the right coach for me. I didn't like the messaging, or I need something different. We don't really get the chance to like, it's not professional for us to defend ourselves in those moments. So we kind of got to eat on the chin. And then the other thing is like when we put together a perfect camp and we go out there and for whatever reason, like it didn't come out on fight night and like the execution wasn't there and they weren't listening to some of the adjustments I make, we're never gonna come out and do an interview and be like, oh, it's his fault he didn't listen, like obviously it's not professional. We wouldn't do it. But yeah, so it's hard in that sense where you kind of I always say this, like when they win, you point the cameras at them. When you lose, you try to point the cameras at you because you want to help absorb that because you don't want them to feel it. But you catch a lot of strays sometimes, and it can be frustrating. But you just have to swallow it because it's never about like me. It's never about like what's hard for me. It's always about the fighter, and I've always had like a fighter first mentality. As like I'll absorb a lot of that stuff, and then credit them when they're winning, and take the credit when we're losing or the blame.
Yeah, coaching is a very selfless job. Definitely in this brutal game, I see it all the time. For example, a situation with you guys, when Qatar fought against Holloway. Everyone knows Qatar is super tough. After that fight, he just looked way tougher to everybody because he wouldn't go down. And they sent him to the hospital right after the fight. For you, did you catch any flack like, hey, you should have thrown in the towel or something like this?
Yeah, you get a lot of it. Like a lot of people saying I don't care about him. A lot of people saying I'm a terrible coach. A lot of people saying like, oh, you're just chasing money. Like, you don't care about your fighters. Like, like threats on Insta, DMs, threats, like stuff like that, just telling you how bad you are.
Crazy.
That was tough. Like, and then ESPN the next day, like, let's sit down because we're at the hotel in another 10 days. Like, let's sit down. Let's do a 3 camera interview with, Barack Obama. Like, let's sit down. We'll let you get your side of the story out. I was like, dude, it's not about me. Like, I don't need to get my side of the story out. Like, we lost. I'm pissed that we lost. Like, I'm worried about Calvin at this point. Like, I don't care about if people are mad at me, So it's like, it's not my job in that moment to come out and defend myself because I did what I thought was right in the moment. And it is what it is, like, but yeah, you don't get those opportunities to really like. It would have been nice get on camera, and be like, yeah, here's what I saw, and then but it's like it doesn't matter. It's not about me. It's about Calvin. At that point, we're just like in recovery mode, trying to get Calvin healthy again. So there's no sense dwelling on it and me putting in my 2 cents of like trying to defend myself because if people love me or hate me, it doesn't matter. Like I'm still here to try to get these guys ready for fights and win fights, and that's really what my focus is.
Yeah, and I think everybody loved Calvin a lot more after that fight too. You
Yeah,
know,
that's a
it
whenever
it grows on you.
yeah, that was a
Whenever
historic
you
fight.
see somebody leave a piece of themselves in that octagon, it's almost like as a fan, I'm a longtime fan. As a fan, I really appreciate that. Obviously, I want the best for him, his health and all that. I don't care as long as he's healthy. But to sacrifice yourself for the viewers, that was really I really respected that. And all these fighters you have. Do you have any favorites in the gym? Do you have anyone that you secretly love more?
You don't play favorites. You definitely have like different relationships with different fighters. Like, there's some guys that, the memes go back and forth on Instagram a little bit more than some of the other fighters. And, some that you're texting more, some that call me, like, some fighters prefer to talk on the phone more than others. Some fighters prefer to FaceTime. So it depends. Like, I think the further I get in my coaching career, like the more I'm drawn to the people that show like appreciation and buy-in. Like it's naturally you're going to be like bought into those guys because they're bought into you and there's synergy there,
Yeah,
versus the guys you show up to the gym and you kind of like, you wonder if they even really like you as their coach or they're just doing it because they lived close, like,
yeah,
and
yeah, of
every gym has that, like every
course.
coach is going to have fighters that they mesh well with and ones that they don't mesh as well with, and that's normal. That's not anything wrong with the fighters, not anything wrong with me. It's not anything wrong with the gym. It's just, like you said, there's going to be some fighters that you just mesh with better. And yeah, I definitely have some that I probably click with a little bit more than others that like probably enjoy traveling with a little bit more than others. And but really it comes down to like if you show belief in what I'm telling you and you're willing to like follow the program, like I'm gonna do anything I can to help you. And there's and the same thing I follow that. I talk to a lot of coaches, man. It's our wives too. Like the wives know which fighters appreciate us because they hear us on the phone, they hear us on speaker, they hear the things that the fighters say to us. Like those fighters, they will let you drop a wedding anniversary to go corner that fighter. But if it's the fighter that like doesn't seem to appreciate anything you're doing, they're like, "You're seriously, you're gonna miss your son's flag football game for that?" Like, no, like so like you get the appreciation that you earn, in my opinion. And it's not just me; it's other coaches too. So like, man, you show up, work hard every day, buy into what I'm saying, show appreciation for the time I'm putting in, and I will go to the ends of the earth to help you win the fight.
That sounds very fair. You know, that sounds very fair. It seems it's similar in every sport, but I feel like MMA there is that one-on-one bond between coach and fighter. It's a little different. The sports that are not team sports,
Yeah, the thing that makes it awkward in our sport is like we get a chance to bond a lot more,
Yeah,
but there's also a lot more opportunity for awkwardness. Like, because you gotta look at the dynamic of like our sport is like Drake, I'm a Patriots fan, right? Like Mike Vrabel doesn't have to go to Drake May after the AFC Championship game to get paid.
yeah,
Right? He doesn't
yeah,
have to ask him for his money, like, "Hey, can I invoice you?" Or Mike Vrabel doesn't have to go to like, Drake May, if he didn't like one of the play calls on Sunday, he can't fire Mike Vrabel going into the Super Bowl.
yeah,
So there's like a weird dynamic that's like we're
yeah.
supposed to be these leaders and we're supposed to be like the general and we're supposed to like lead these guys and like be a mentor and like kind of be the boss, But in real but when it comes to finances, like it's flipped upside down. It's where the employee, So I think it's a weird dynamic where you're trying to be the biggest critic to someone who eventually becomes kind of a celebrity, right? And has everybody around them as yes men, like their whole family, they're the famous person in their life. So you have all these people around this person propping them up, telling them how great they are and this and that. And you're the kind of the one person that's like, hey man, you're not that great. We're fighting this other guy who's just as great. Like you gotta lock in. You gotta quit being a turd, you know? And so you're that one point of friction in their life. You're the one guy that's not making them feel like the superstar, the celebrity, like that knows everything. You're the guy that's bringing them down because that's
Yeah.
how you can help them win. Some fighters don't deal well with that, you know, I see it all the times with my coach friends. They have fighters come into the gym, then they leave, and they go like this. Like fighters move around, man. It
Yeah.
happens. They move around. They're unhappy. They point fingers. Like so, it's a weird dynamic compared to the other sports. Like in the NFL, the front office hires Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel sets the starting lineup, and Mike Vrabel can bench you if you're not behaving.
Yeah.
I can say all I want to a fighter, like, "Hey, I don't like your attitude," but he can be like, "Cool, I'm gonna go start train somewhere else." He's either gonna buy in or he's not, and then I have to hold a certain standard in the room. It's tough, it's a weird dynamic in that sense where I think the professional, the big team sports, they have they're a huge advantage over us because ours is a delicate balance of like ultimately we're trying to lead our boss, you know? It's
Yeah.
like, you're trying to get them to do things that they might not necessarily want to do, and then after you're trying to get you have to get paid by that person. So it's like the money part comes into it. It's a weird dynamic, and I think it's such a young sport still realistically that it's still working itself out.
Yeah, and most interesting thing you said, because I've seen the Israel Adesanya documentary on Amazon Prime, and it showed how Eugene Behrman is that guy in his life. He's the one that's like, yeah, you still got to train. You still got. He's the one that's like seems negative to Israel, and you saw that Israel's reaction to it wasn't really positive. He's like, why is this guy on my ass so much? Why isn't he happy? But if Eugene is gonna be happy and everything is chill, then that's the moment it starts going down.
Yeah, it's a tough balance, and it takes buy-in from the fighter and the coach. It can't just be one or the other, and that's what makes like when you have like a coach like Eugene and Alessandra, that's what makes I think the fan really it really resonates because you appreciate like man like either one of these guys like Eugene can tell him f off. Adesanya could be like, "You're fired, I'm gonna go train somewhere else." But, like, they do it together even though it's hard. They're both making the harder decisions, and, so that's where you really appreciate it, you see some of these fighters that, even like Volkanovski with Joe, his coach Joe, and, been through a lot of losses together now recently, but still sticks with him, and, like,
Yeah.
as a coach, you appreciate that, and, yeah, so that's what you strive for.
And you can tell when you watch that documentary, you can tell from Israel's face, his behavior. He wants Gene to be like all happy about it. He wants Gene's, how can I say, like,
Approval?
confirmation.
Yeah.
He wants Gene to be happy with him. And he's really frustrated, genuinely frustrated why Eugene doesn't seem to be happy. It's not like he wasn't happy. He's just like a regular coach, He's just like, "Hey, we're not
Yeah.
done. We
We
got to
yeah, we
work on
can't
this."
we can never feel satisfied, and I say it to
Exactly.
the guys in the gym is like, "Guys, like, here's the reality is, like, you gotta understand that like we're competitive driven individuals. We're never gonna be satisfied. Like it doesn't matter if we set our goal to be a champion. The minute you become a champion, it's gonna be like, well, I want to be a two-time champion or defend it three times, or I want to be a double champ. And then if you don't do that, you're gonna feel like your career wasn't successful. And I always use this. I was like, I asked my guys on my team. I was like, the young guys, like you, if you could have Rob Font's career right now, you snap your fingers and you got to did everything Rob Font would do, and you said, my God, that would be a dream come true. Okay, let's go to Rob Font. Rob Font, do you feel like your career is your dream come true? No, I wish I would have won this fight. I still didn't get a title fight. I wanted this. Okay, cool. Okay, so Aljamain Sterling, he had the belt in Rob's division. Aljamain, he was the champion, probably arguably one of the goats of all time before Marab at 35. Are you happy with your career? He's like, no, I lost the belt and then I didn't win at 45. I haven't won the belt at 45 yet. So then you go to Volkanovski and then you go to Khabib. It's like nobody's going to be satisfied with where their career gets. So I try to tell the guys like, listen, like just acknowledge the fact that we're never going to be satisfied, but
Yeah.
we have to be grateful,
Yeah.
and practicing gratitude is something I preach to the guys. It's very hard. It's effort that you have to put in every day. It's like, yeah, you might not become the champion, but like maybe Rob Font never becomes a champion, but like at the end of the day, I've been with that kid since the first time he sparred an MMA round in 2011. And I'm still
Wow.
managing. I'm like, if that kid retires after his next fight, or if he does three more fights and he retires, like me and him are going to be able to like look at each other and be like, damn, look what you did. Look what you did.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I was part of it, like, and then we're going to be proud of that. But are we going to be satisfied? Probably not. Because we're going to think about all the things we could have done differently. Like, oh man, maybe if we would have done this, maybe if we had done that, like we could have won the belt, you know? So like, I think acknowledging the fact that we're never going to be satisfied, but understanding the fact that it's on us to practice gratitude, I think is like very important.
Yeah, I agree. Tyson, what's the biggest issue in current MMA? Yeah.
I think from my perspective, where like I manage and coach fighters, as like I see, it's like I think the lack of professionalism among the people involved, like whether it be coaches or managers. And I'm not saying this is everybody, but like I don't think there's any space for coaches and managers to be trading off kickbacks. Like you'll see coaches will tell a manager, hey, if you get those guys over there to fire their coach and come to my gym, I'll kick you into my percentage. And then you see managers saying, hey, if you get any of your fighters to fire their manager and come to me, I'll give you a kickback on my percentage. So you see a lot of that happening. And that's when you look and you see a gym all of a sudden go from having like 2, 3 UFC fighters, now all of a sudden they have 8 UFC fighters move into town and start training with them. That's because there's a deal with their manager and their coach. And they're to me, it's being greedy. It's like if you're a coach, you're making your 10% or whatever, your gym fee, you're a manager, you're making your 10 to 20% or whatever. Like they're using that percentage to recruit and have like a manager uses it to have a coach recruit for him and poach and steal for him. And a coach uses it to have a manager steal for him. So they get new guys. It's like stay in your lane, build the guys that you have in your circuit already, and like build up young amateurs that come to your gym and turn them into UFCs. Don't ask a manager to help build your gym and steal and give them a kickback to do that. And managers shouldn't be trying to grow their roster by having fighter coaches go and poach for them. Like there's two people. The MMA is so hard for these fighters, right? And like, who can they really trust? Their family knows nothing about the sport, so their family can't really give them advice. They don't understand a thing about how the sport works. That's a whole nother thing we get into, but the families really don't get how it works. So you can't really get advice from your family. So who can they get advice from? Like their teammates, right? They got older teammates that maybe went through it, but it's your manager and your coach. Those are the two people that you're like invested with, both from a career standpoint and then also financially. Those are the two people that should be able to give you honest answers. So if you have a problem with your coach, you're going to go to your manager. Now, if your coach is doing something wrong, and you go to your manager and says, hey, my coach is doing this. It seems weird. Your manager, you work with a lot of gyms, so you can tell them what's like the norm and what's not. If they come to you and their coach is doing something really wrong, but I'm making 10% extra or 5% extra because your coach has kicked me back a percentage, I'm not going to do what's best for you in that moment. I'm loyal to the coach because the coach is giving me more money. So if I have you go to another gym, it's going to be like, I'm going to make less money. Or the flip side is, I have this gym over, this coach isn't paying me anything, but this gym over here is. You come to me complain about your coach and he's really not even doing anything wrong. You're just kind of having a bad day or whatever. Well, now I have a vested interest. Like, yeah, I don't know. He should not be doing that. You should go over here and train at this gym. And so, and the same thing happens with the managers. Like you go to your coach and be like, oh, my manager's kind of saying this. It seems weird. And then you're not getting money from that manager, but this other manager will give you money. Hey, dude, you know what? You should talk to this other guy. I trust him more than that guy. And it's because you're trying to make more money. So like I think you're taking like what's already a hard enough sport for these athletes in a sport where there's like no blueprint on how to get to the UFC. And then when you get to the UFC, there's no blueprint on how to stay there. And very few fighters get to that point where they can retire off the money they make. So you're already taking a sport that's a long, hard road with no set blueprint. And you're taking the two people in their career that are supposed to help them navigate and be trusted. And the minute you put money into it with kickbacks, now you just took the two people you're supposed to trust and made it so you can't trust either one of them. Because now they care about their wallet, not you. So I always say, like, if your manager is giving your kickbacks to your coach is giving kickbacks to your manager, like you're with a person that's willing to do like shady things, like that's who you're in bed with. Like I'll never take a kickback. I'll never offer a coach a kickback. I'll never like offer a manager a kickback as a coach. Like I won't do any of it. And like I feel like I've gotten a lot of heat in this industry for like speaking out against this, but like I'm for the fighter. Like I care about the fighter. And if you're at a gym and your coach is getting kickbacks from the manager and you have a problem with your manager, he's gonna tell you to stay there. And the same thing if your manager is giving kickbacks to the coach, it works both ways. Like, but it's a conflict of interest in my opinion. And like I don't think there's any space for it. So like, I don't like to use the word like collective bargaining because then it looks like I'm looking trying to have a union in MMA, and I'm not saying that. I don't even know how a union would work in MMA, but I do think there needs to be some sort of like honor code amongst these coaches and these managers, like an agreement, like, hey man, I won't poach from you, you don't poach from me. There's no kickbacks. Let's do this the honest way. And like, I think that's what has to happen. But it won't because a lot of these guys are greedy. They only care about money. They look at their fighters as a number. They have all their fighters fight each other. Like I just don't. I think there's a big lack of integrity amongst a lot of these coaches. Not all of them. There's some great coaches, but a lot of these coaches and a lot of these managers, they have a lack of integrity, and they're not doing what's best for their fighters. They're doing what's best for themselves, and I'm very much against that.
Thanks for bringing that to our attention because that's an insight that we have not received yet on this channel.
It happens quite a bit. It's unfortunate, but it definitely does happen. And I know for a fact it happens. I've seen screenshots. I've seen this is, I've been told by this manager if I get any of these guys to, like come over, I'll get, they charge them 20%, they'll give me 5% of it, like, and the coach is doing the same thing and they'll have these deals. And it's like, I don't believe in it at all. Like, I just think it's shady business. I won't partake in it. Just keep supporting the fighters. Like, it's free now. It's on Paramount. Well, not free, but it's cheap. Just like, do yourself a favor. Like, you see a fighter fight on TV, like go follow their Instagram. When they post, like their photos, give a comment, stuff like that. Send a positive DM. Like that means a lot to the fighters. Like a lot of these fighters do check the DMs, even though I tell them not to. Like, say something nice, even if they lose. Like, we don't care about you reaching out after wins. Our phones are pretty busy after a win, but after a loss, send them a little message like, hey man, I appreciate your fight. Like, I saw you fought with heart. Like, that will go a long way. Like, that's the fans they need. They don't need you when they're winning. When these guys are losing, reach out, give them a follow. Like, it's going to help with sponsors, it's going to help with morale, but like, and keep your stupid opinions to yourself, like, just like, you can make an impact on these fighters. If you watch a fight, even though the guy loses, but you thought he fought with heart, like, throw a DM in there, follow, throw a DM, like, hey man, sorry fight, you fought with a lot of heart. Like, I really respect you. Like, keep your head up. I'm looking forward to the next one. That goes so far with these young fighters where every loss, they think their world's ending. They think their life's done and they're never going to win another fight. Like, those little things go a long way.
Guys, you heard it here first. Thank you for watching the largest podcast in the world, Never Made Weight. My name is Sped. I'm your host, Tyson Chartier, the head coach and founder of New England Cartel. Thank you so much, Tyson. I really appreciate it.
He's wearing a t-shirt that says "Never Made." I believe him. I think he's telling the truth.